Alright, what's up, my ninjas? I'm Strident, and I am back with another review. This time we're reviewing Iron Man 3. Excuse me, still got my cold. So, I want to preface this review a little bit. I I'm not really an Iron Man fan. My favorite version of Iron Man comes from the Ultimate comics, especially the first two versions of Ultimates, or first two, you know, arcs of Ultimates, Ultimates 1 and Ultimates 2. I really don't. I liked him when I was a kid. I haven't really been keeping up with him as much. Extremis was one of the last stories that I did read back in the day. So I vaguely remember a lot of the pieces from it. But yeah, I never really was big into Iron Man except for around the time of the Armor Wars, because you got to see all the different armors, you got to see what villains would do with Tony Stark's tech, and you got a lot of decent villains, a lot of decent kind of espionage-esque type situations. Almost, it felt like Metal Gear almost, but just with superheroes as the focus and supervillains as opposed to just military, squads and whatnot. But overall, like I said, I was not a big Iron Man fan. I liked the first movie. I hated the second movie. This movie is kind of in between. It's better than, it's 100% better than Iron Man 2, but it doesn't really have the oomph to trump Iron Man 1. So I'm going to give you a really brief synopsis. If you don't know, this is pretty much what's happened to Tony Stark since the Avengers. Tony Stark pretty much has anxiety issues or mild PTSD from what he experienced while saving the world in the Avengers. Any mention of what happened back in New York kind of, gives him ridiculous anxiety. And I don't mean ridiculous in a bad, like, it's stupid. I mean ridiculous as in the amount. Serious, like, bring him to his knees type anxiety. And he hasn't been taking it well. He's not taking medication. He's holed up in his house. He's completely absorbed in his work, which isn't good for his relationship with Pepper Potts, because, they're together after Iron Man, 2? Anyway, the story starts with a flashback. You see him at a party. You see a guy he met back in the day trying to, a guy who's a fan of Tony Stark shows up. A fan of also Tony Stark's date shows up, tells him about an idea he has, which is AIM, Advanced Idea Mechanics, for those of you who don't know. And Tony Stark blows him off. And this creates, hatred, obviously, for that, for Tony Stark through that character. And in the future, it comes back to bite him. This guy also is, this newfound villain is also in league with the Mandarin, who in this version is kind of like an Osama bin Laden type terrorist figure who is bombing various parts of the United States as a, he says, as lessons. And I actually dug Ben Kingsley as the Mandarin. It was a really, 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 really different take on the character. I would have never thought to make him, that kind of a character, because it almost doesn't fit, because Mandarin is Chinese, and this guy kind of had this Al-Qaeda kind of, I don't know, this presence and this, I don't know. It just didn't fit what I would have thought up as the Mandarin, or what I remember as the Mandarin. But long story short, the girl he was trying to hump pretty much created Extremis, or pioneered Extremis, but it wasn't perfect. She hadn't perfected it yet. Years down the road, you find out that the man who came to Stark and this girl that was trying to, kind of work with them, he ended up pioneering it and perfecting it, and eventually he got her help. And there is a side effect to it, which pretty much people blow up. If your body doesn't take to the serum and it doesn't reject it, you will. If it doesn't reject it, you will gain healing abilities, enhanced whatever. Extremis pretty much rewrites your genetic code to whatever it is that the the person that's, administering extremists to you, whatever they want or whatever you decided ahead of time that you want as an upgrade. So it can make you heal, it can make you super strong, it can make you be able to superheat your body. I mean, there's a number of things it can do in this version. I remember it from the comics. In the comics, I think all it did, it healed people, and Tony had it create his armor. And that's why I didn't really dig Extremis that much, because I thought it was like a Deus Ex Machina for Iron Man, whereas Iron Man had always been about the man creating things to help aid him in his fight, which is why in the movie they didn't do that. So that's a brief, once over what the whole plot is and all that stuff. Pretty much Stark, Happy gets injured while trying to snoop around and follow one of the main villain's people. And this is, you find out that the main villain is actually, spoiler, the main villain is actually Killian, the man who approached Tony Stark at the party, who, you see later, and not necessarily the Mandarin. I'll get to that later. But one of the explosion goes off. It hurts Happy. This really pisses Tony off. Tony issues a threat on national television while leaving the hospital. And he's attacked at his home. And that's the crazy scene you see in the trailers and whatnot, where missiles are hitting Stark's estate and shit's falling into the water and blah blah blah, and it's pretty crazy. So Stark pretty much ends up, as a result, separated from everyone with just his prototype number, the Mark 47, and he has to figure out what's going on and thwart what's actually going on in the process. Cool things about this film is that you get to see Stark using his brain to do other things than stupid shit like building an element. You actually see him do some detective work, which was kind of like, wow. It was like Stark had a full-blown detective mode in his garage or whatever, his little work station, or whatever you want to call his workshop. You got to see a shitload of his suits. You also got to see a lot of Stark. I mean, most times you saw, I want to say there was a good mix of Stark and the costume. This one, you really don't see the costume as much, except for the very end of the movie. You see several of them. But the movie focused more on Stark as a human being and less on Iron Man, which is a plus and a minus depending on where you fall in your like for the character. Do you like Stark with his armor on and the personality that he kind of, projects when he's in the armor? Or do you like Tony Stark, the man who's a complete asshole but has these moments of vulnerability and, excuse me, feels like very much like a regular person? It all depends on that. Also, I I dug the idea of making War Machine pretty much one of the president's bodyguards, so to speak, or the president's personal army, one-man army, and calling him Iron Patriot, because I always felt it was strange that Norman Osborn was able to do that in the comics. So this is one of those things that felt like an improvement. I know some people might hate it because, on the flip side, Norman Osborn was pretty damn devious when he was running around in the Iron Patriot armor. So it all depends on where you fall with that situation, but I thought it was cool. I do have problems with him in this film, and I'll tell you more about that in the portion where I talk about what I didn't like. But it was cool. I like the fact that Tony Stark used his imagination with how he was using his armors. There's a scene in the destruction of his mansion sequence where he uses the 47, Mark 47 armor to protect Pepper. So, there was a Lego box set that had a version of Iron Man with Pepper's head on it. And everyone was thinking, oh, Iron Maiden's going to be in the movie. And it turns out that it's just that he used the armor to protect her. This is a plus, and it's a inconsistency when I get to the part where I tell you more about what I didn't like about the film. But it was nice to see him think that way, you know, because normally he's pretty self-absorbed, and you know, if he's gonna save anyone, it's gonna be his hot-ass girlfriend, you know what I mean? And I was like, you know, that makes sense. I totally feel where he's coming from with it. It makes sense. It doesn't feel out of character for Stark at all. The Mandarin. I loved the Mandarin. Even though, like I said, the look and then his MO felt like they didn't fit. You could be a terrorist, and you could, what's the word? You could fancy a different culture's iconography and use that and still operate, you know what I mean? Like a terrorist from whatever region you're from. So they never said that the Mandarin himself is Chinese. You could just tell he liked the style, he liked the name. That was just it was his shtick. So he could very much have been Middle Eastern and follow this. In the movie, though, the Mandarin is actually a farce. He's not a real terrorist. He's an actor playing the role of terrorist to misguide the American, well, the public at large from who the real villain is. And I think that's pretty smart. You know, it's one of the things that the movie actually did right, that it was a little bit deeper, or a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? More devious, you know, well thought out than some of the other things that happen in the film. Ben Kingsley, the only bad role I've ever seen him in was in Blood Rain. So I can't really complain about Ben Kingsley. The dude, he's obviously a master of his craft. Even when he plays shitty characters, he's not the worst thing in the film. And he was definitely really good in this film. It was like he was channeling, what's that guy's name? Russell Brand or something like that, which was kind of weird. It was like, what? And he was doing a better job imitating Russell Brand than Russell Brand does for himself. So it was kind of funny. I don't know if other people felt the same way, but as soon as you see him break the whole, you know, you'll never see me coming, that when he breaks that whole role and he jumps back into his stuttering, you're like, wow, that's fucking, don't go running around the re-road. This shit was awesome. I thought he did a good job with that, as he always does. I mean, what would you expect? He probably was the best actor in the film, hands down. Now, I also like the idea of actually getting to see, you know, Iron Man's Iron Legion, quote unquote. They did a good job having several different suits. But I have a criticism, and that's going to come into the next part. And the next part will be things I didn't like about the film. Okay, so you have the Iron Legion, which means you get to see tons of suits made by billionaire, playboy, genius, philanthropist Tony Stark, futurist Tony Stark, who thinks of just about everything. But when you see all these suits on screen in the final battle, many of the suits blow up when fighting these extremists, injected or enhanced people, which it makes you wonder, like, was he slacking on the materials? I mean, like, last time I checked, he was able to hang with people like Thor. I mean, he fights Thor and his suit doesn't blow up when Thor hits him. Matter of fact, it absorbed mystical electricity or lightning or whatever you want to call it. And in this movie, he gets punched by people. His suits get punched by people that have extremists in them. And it was like more powerful than what the Hulk was doing, because it was blowing up his suit. And I'm saying to myself, that doesn't feel like, no, it doesn't feel right. That doesn't seem like that should be happening. It was very inconsistent. Also, in the beginning of the movie, you see Iron Man or Tony Stark direct the Mark 47 to attach itself to Pepper Potts. And she did an awesome job. I'm not going to diss her at all. Gwyneth Paltrow, still fine. Not as thick as she was in the previous film, but still fine. But anyway, the 47 attaches itself to Pepper Potts. Later on in the movie, towards the end, you see Rhodes get his armor jacked. Like, all he did was eject. Someone else jumped in. Granted, I guess many people could say it's AIM, the guys are geniuses, but they didn't make the suit. They just overhauled it, right? How were they able to use his suit. Number one, why were they able to one-shot the War Machine or the Iron Patriot, knock him down with all they did was heat his hand, and they put him out of commission. Then once they get him out of the suit, all of a sudden they were able to get that one smarmy ball-headed guy in there and had him fucking piloting the shit. I mean, he learned some of the weapon systems on the spot. How was he able to even be in there? Later on in the film, in the climactic end battle, Stark explains that his suits are all coded, imprinted, calibrated just for him. So he couldn't give Rhodey one of the suits, but you've already seen him get the 42 on his girlfriend. The president was also in the Iron Patriot armor as well, and they like remote controlled that shit to the tanker where the climactic battle takes place. And I'm saying to myself the whole time, like, wait a second, so you could do all that, but you couldn't give Rhodes one of those suits? Rhodes was Iron Man for a period of time in the books. I know in the movies he wasn't, but he jumped into one of Tony's suits and beat his ass. You know what I'm saying? Like, and they weren't coded for him back then, so isn't that kind of I don't know, like, stupid? It didn't fit. And I'm thinking, you know, up to the most part, the movie's kind of smart, but when you have a character like Stark, you need writing that's really consistent and really smart, you know? And in this film, that's not what you get. You get it in bursts, but you don't get like a consistent burst of that smart or intelligence, you know, that you need. Another gripe I have, before I get to the greatest gripe of all, and I think many people had this gripe with the film, is, okay, so Iron Man has all these suits, right? And I pointed out that you don't really get to see what they all really do, like what makes them different. And that's also a gripe that I've had about Iron Man comics over the years. But what exactly did the Mark 47 do besides splitting apart like Voltron or something and coming to him in pieces? I mean, we've already seen versions of the armor actually get come to him in a package kind of, and then open up so that he can jump in. But this one comes in several pieces, like it's modular, you know what I mean? What else does it do? I heard him say prehensile, but it didn't enhance his movement. It didn't make him faster. It didn't make him, I mean, I don't know if it did. It was just a little bit, but, you know, being that we've never really seen Iron Man do martial arts or like fight someone hand to hand, we couldn't really make the distinction between what this suit does versus what the others do, and all you see it do is fail throughout the film, which is weird. And that's my big gripe. In the previous two movies, as much as I didn't like 2, you at least got to see the difference between, you know, the Mark 1 through, what was it, 7? And although I have to say 7 just seemed like it could fly forever, you know, and it gave him aerial superiority. And it had pretty decent firepower in comparison to the others, and more of it. But they don't make it clear why he needs so many damn suits, you know? And this is a gripe I've had with Iron Man as a character. There needs to be a more thought out, more specific reason for all of the suits, you know? I remember in the Iron Man animated film from a while back, he had suits for specific situations, you know, i.e. a space armor, which should have been the Silver Centurion armor, but I don't think it was. He had an ocean armor or underwater armor that was really thick so it could, you know, protect him from the various pressures of the ocean. You've seen the Thor Buster, the Hulk Buster, so we know there are specialized suits. But, you know, we've also seen Extremis, we've seen the Tin Man armor, we've seen the modular armor, and we've seen the, what is the new one called? I don't remember the new one. Anyway, there's a lot of armors, you know, and I wanted them to explore the distinct differences between them when we see them in battle or when he's working on them, and we don't get that. Consistency seems to be like the biggest issue, because You have scenes of Stark taking people down with homemade weapons, and he's shooting at them with pinpoint accuracy like he's a pro. But then you get scenes of him with a gun in his hand in that scene where, towards the end, where he's with Rhodes, and he doesn't know what to do with it. He can't aim it right. He doesn't know that one clip doesn't fit every gun, and it's just weird, you know? Or his anxiety attacks. He gets anxiety attacks from a mention of New York, or, you know, the wormhole or whatever, but then people are shooting at him and stuff, and he's cool under pressure. It just doesn't make sense. The biggest offense in the film is at the very end. During the course of the second act of the film, Pepper Potts gets kidnapped by the main villain, Ulrich Killian. He injects her with extremists, and he explains how, and you've seen it a couple times by now in the film, that for some people it's really, for most people it's painful. The transformation, you know, the whole process of your body getting acclimated to extremists is difficult. So it's extremely painful, and he shows Tony all the pain she's going through and whatnot. And then when Tony escapes, he's like set up to go get her. That's his mission. He gets to her, and he kind of fails to save her. She falls into the fire. You're like, oh shit, Pepper's dead. And then at the end, while he's trying, you know, he goes ham on the villain, she pops up out of the fire, hits the dude. Then she does like a dragon punch. I'm talking like straight up, sure you can. Her fist goes through the like Heartbreaker armor, I think it was. She punches it to the floor, then rips the arm off, puts her hand in that arm, kicks like a big old bullet shell or like a compressed air canister or something at Killian, and then shoots it with the repulsor like she's been doing this shit all day, every day. And then she's like, whoa, that was violent. Like, she doesn't know why she did it. Now, they've been real consistent with how Pepper Potts acts in all the films. Her performance is one of the ones that you don't really have to think too much about, because she knows her character very well, and Gwyneth Paltrow plays the character perfectly. You know, she hits all those beats. The parts where she's not happy with Tony because he's too absorbed in something. It could be himself, it could be his work, whatever. The times where, like there's a scene where the suit, Tony's having, you know, one of his little PTSD episodes, and his the Mark 47, which he was able to remote control, is it comes into the room, and it scares the shit out of her, and she leaves because she's like, fuck that shit. I'm sleeping with this dude, and his fucking science project is about to kill us, you know what I mean? In his sleep. So, you know, you see her act very much like a regular person, like a real human being, and then all of a sudden she's doing dragon punches and shit because she has extremists in her body, and it just took. I mean, like, it's the kind of shit that kills an otherwise pretty decent film, you know? So with all those things that I pointed out, you still have a decent film. The package is good. The music was actually really well done. It was really different from what I was expecting tonally. I was expecting more like hard, heavy, because it's the third film, and usually the third is the end of the trilogy. Instead, it was more James Bondish. It was kind of whimsical, and like, since there was a lot of comedy in the film, it fit. So I was pretty pleased with what, I think Brian Tyler did the music. I was pleased with what he did, and unlike a lot of people, I like Brian Tyler's scores. They're usually accurate for whatever it is that he's scoring. I mean, the shit he did for Expendables was amazing. Music he did for Fast and Furious, they're all good. Especially Tokyo Drift. The stuff he's done for Rambo, I love the score to Rambo. So I don't know, this was fine. This isn't one of my favorites, but it was fine. Especially the theme for Iron Man, it fit. It's softer than what I was expecting. And when I saw, just, you know, most superheroes have a pretty hard-hitting theme, and I think Ramin Djawadi's or Djawad. Wow, I just fucked up his name, and I'm so used to people screwing up mine. Ramin Djawad, his version of the theme was a little bit better. It was a little generic because it was so much rock, but This one seemed more along the lines of what Marvel usually gives him. They always give him this semi-James Bond sounding theme, and I never understood it, but I guess there is a fair deal of espionage and intrigue in Tony Stark's world, so it fits. He does hang out with spies a lot. So, all in all, this movie's like a B+, go see it. Check it out whenever. Don't pay for 3D because it doesn't seem like the kind of film that 3D would enhance it very much. It could have been, but just from the camera angles that were used, it doesn't feel like it lends itself to that sort of thing. So I'd avoid 3D. It's $10 just for a basic 2D showing anyway. So, if you're balling like that, then hey, go see it however you want. Overall, like I said, it's a fun movie. You'll enjoy it if you enjoyed the first movie. You might even enjoy it a lot if you enjoyed the second movie, which in my opinion was horrible on several levels. But it's a good movie, so check it out. Marvel didn't drop the ball with this one, despite all the errors that are in the film. But anyway, get at me in the comments. Let me know what you think. Let me know how you feel. And that's it for me. You've been great. I will talk to you later. Peace outside.